Okay. Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this meeting of licensing and regulatory. Bore da, croeso cynnes i'r cyfarfod yma bore yma yn Sir Fynwy. Welcome to the meeting. I'm Tudor Thomas. I'm chair of Licensing and Regulatory Committee. Obviously, I'll be chairing the meeting today. I will explain once we've done the apologies, etc. We've slight change because we've got training this morning, but I'll explain that when we get to the agenda. Okay, can we move now then to first of all, apologies for absence. Have you had any apologies for absence, please?
None received, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Secondly, declarations of interest. Any declaration of interest? No. If something arises, then obviously please indicate and we can record it, and then you can fill in the appropriate form. Third item on the agenda, to confirm and sign the minutes of the previous meeting. You've also had the minutes in advance, hopefully had time to sort of peruse them, to look at them. Are people happy with the minutes? And if so, is somebody happy to put them forward? Okay, thanks, Councillor Easton. Seconder? Yeah, thanks, Jackie, Councillor Jackie Strong. So we're happy with that. I'll sign those now at the end of the meeting. Before we go, before we go on to item agenda 4, the review of the licensing fees for this coming year, 24-25. Slight change of plan today. We're going to move, hopefully get the things finished by about 20 to 11, quarter to 11, and we have training then on the licensing of tattooists and parlours and body piercers, etc. And we've got environmental health officers coming in to speak to us briefly, and then there's further training from Dr Sarah Jones from Welsh Government, Llywodraeth Cymru in Cardiff. So what I propose is that hopefully we'll be concluded by about quarter to 11. We'll have a short break. We'll go into the training, which probably will last no more than, I would think, about an hour or so. So hopefully we'll be finished before 1 o'clock, and I know one or two people had other engagements, so we'll hopefully get the training done by that time. Other than that, now I'm going to hand over to Linda Gorman, who is going to take us through the review of licensing fees for all the things that are licensed by this committee and by the authority, and we'll, for the forthcoming year, which is 2024-25. So hand over to Linda O'Gorman now, please.
Thank you, Chair. The report that's brought to committee today is for the annual fees on licences that we are able to set fees for. Recommendation of this report in 2.1 is to approve the fees set out in Appendix A to this report, entitled Schedule of Licence Fees for 2024 to 2025. Any objections duly made regarding the fees to the grant of licence for Hackney carriage and private hire vehicles be brought back to committee at the earliest opportunity for due consideration. And the reason why that is in 2.2 is we have a duty when we set fees on 3.8 of this report, in accordance with section 70 of the Local Government Miscellaneous Provisions Act 1976, to give notice for Hackney carriage and private hire vehicles and operators when there's any change in fees, and they have an opportunity then to make objections if they so wish. So if I go on to the main body of the report then, 3.1, the authority has a broad range of licensing responsibilities, including regulation of licensed premises, taxis and Hackney carriage, gambling, street trading, street collections and scrap metal dealers. While some licence fees are set by government, others are set locally, set at the discretion of the authority, hence the reason for this report today. The basis of setting such fees is generally to ensure full cost recovery or as close as possible. Licensing fees may not be used to generate a profit for the council. This report summarises all licence fees that are proposed to be reviewed to come into effect from 1st of April 2024. In assessing the fees, relevant legislation per licence type and guidance around fee setting for local authorities must be taken into account when determining the actual cost of producing a licence, has been considered when preparing the report and the proposed fees. So in this year, I've put in how we assess the fees, more information on that, which is in 3.5 of the report. The fee setting process itself is reviewed to ensure that it remains valid. Any change in law, guidance or case law will be taken into account. The underlying data to determine the fees is reviewed to ensure that the time calculated remains accurate. Each licence process is reviewed to ensure that the time calculated remains accurate. The authority's finance department is asked to update the staff hourly costs, including on-cost. Other costs such as IT, specialist equipment are reviewed to ensure that they remain relevant. If there was a significant profit or loss in the previous licence period, the fees for the next period need to be reduced or increased by the same amount. The cost calculator, which is a key one on G of this report, is the cost calculator is then updated to calculate any change in fees using the Wales Licensing Expert Panel spreadsheet as recommended for national use. So there's quite an in-depth assessment before it actually gets to the stage of this report. Also in 3.6, I've given a breakdown of those fees that we'll be setting today, except for gambling, which will be later, as mentioned in the report, due to the nature of when the fees should be set for gambling. So we've got a quick overview of the safety of sports ground certificates, hackney carriages and private hire licences. You can see how they are accounted for, street trading consents, scrap metal dealers, boats, sex establishments, and as I mentioned, gambling will be done at a later committee on the 9th of April 2024 committee for that purpose. So you go into much more depth on the gambling side there. So that's the nature of the report, Chair, is to seek approval of the fees in Appendix A to this report.
Okay, thank you, Linda. Thank you for taking us through that. And obviously, it's quite a large number of fees and charges that we do impose and collect as an authority. Are there any comments, please, in terms of what is set out in the report? Councillor Eason.
Yeah, thank you. I couldn't get my hand up. Yeah, I propose we accept the recommendations as they stand. Okay,
thanks. Councillor Dale Rook, got your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just curious to know if the charges just cover the administration costs, or is there a profit made from these charges? I think it's just on costs that are associated with it, but I'm happy to be corrected. Thank you.
Yes, Chair. It's no profit on the cost, as mentioned in the report itself. It's actually what work has been carried out for the previous year. So it could be like enforcement, meetings, training, how long it takes to process each licence type. So there's a number of factors that's brought in just to recover costs, basically, but there's no profit to be made from licensing fees.
Okay.
Could I just expand on that, Chair? Yeah, the actual net budget for licensing is about tens of thousands of pounds, so £30,000–40,000. So most of the service of licensing with Linda and 4 licensing officers is covered by the income from the fees. So there is some cost to the authority, but it's minimal because it's mainly on a cost recovery basis. Thanks.
Thanks, Mr. Jones. Councillor Chris Edwards, please.
Thank you. Sorry, my hand function doesn't work. I've just noticed that Alistair wants to speak as well.
Bring Alistair in next.
Just a quick observation. I wonder whether in future years we could have some kind of graph just indicating how many applications are received in each area and how many are approved, just so we can get a feel for, you know, how many applications come in and whether or not it needs to be discussed at some point about the fees or what's putting people off or what's making them unsuccessful and so on. Thank you.
Yes, I'm happy to do that. Like I said, I did a breakdown within the report, but I'm happy to do graphs to make it user-friendly, really, for this report.
Yeah, just to add to that, 3.6 we did, because there were a number of questions this time last year, Linda has gone through that, so you'll notice Hackney carriages, we currently license 80 vehicles for Hackney, 97 for private hire vehicles, so we have tried to give that, but yeah, pictorially would be helpful, wouldn't it? But yeah, so things you might think is a bit strange, so sector established, we haven't got any, but it needs to be there to ensure that if we do have an application, we're ready to go for that application. So hopefully 3.6 covers that immediate question as to how many we got, because I think this time last year some questions as to how's that impact if it's going up by X. If you've only got a few of them, it doesn't make so much difference, does it, in terms of betting shops, for example.
Not too many years in the graph, but perhaps at least the last 5 years as a good comparison, that's all.
Yeah,
thank you.
Great.
Yeah, thanks. I think if we note that, I think for next year, that actually have it sort of pictorially would help. And obviously, in comparison to, say, an authority like a Newport, we're a relatively small authority in terms of licensing of Hackney carriages and private hire, etc. Whereas somewhere like Newport, Cardiff would obviously be, much larger. But obviously, we need to look at that, and I think that's a very valid point. I'll bring in Councillor Alison Neil now, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. Just a couple of questions. Are we able to make a profit if we chose to do so? And what is the overall percentage increase that these increases amount to, please?
You won't make a profit because there's some elements that you can't charge for. You can sort of do enforcement, make the fees back for enforcement, for example, on taxi drivers that are licensed, unlicensed. You don't have that option, but you can only set it on those currently licensed or applying. So you will never ever sort of get to that stage, because there will be some element that will be cost borne by the authority. So you'll never get to that stage where you'll do a profit, and it's the report highlights that it's not to make a profit due to the European directive on certain licences as well, that you are unable to make a profit. You've got to show reasonable costs to run the service itself.
Okay. Thanks. Any other questions?
Sorry, the second question was what's the overall percentage increase?
10%, isn't there?
The percentage increase, like I said, it'll vary per licence type because it depends on the work for that licence. So you wouldn't really have the percentage going forward. It'll show like last year's and this year's fee because you could have more work on one element compared to another form of licence type, which is officers' time and training on that particular form of licences.
Yeah, I can see where Councillor Neil's coming from. We can provide that. I'm just looking at a few of them, isn't there? I think the biggest is probably just over 10%, the 196 to 220, Hackney carriage vehicle renewal. But I think, yeah, it'd be helpful perhaps to provide that overall figure.
Residents and applicants might be interested in the overall increase, sure. And I completely accept that it will be variable in different ways as are most charges, but it would be very helpful to understand. And if it's around 10% increase, then I think that's an important number. Thank you.
Will do. Thank you.
Yes, excuse me. Thanks, Councillor Neil. I think that's an important point, and obviously for operators of these different services, they obviously have to factor in the licensing costs into their business, and obviously we're in reasonably inflationary times at the moment, so every business is obviously looking at costs. So I don't think it's unreasonable to have some concept of an overall figure, but obviously, as Linda O'Gorman has said, it's quite difficult because the licences vary from Hackney carriages, etc., right through to also scrap metal, etc. It's a very wide brief. It's not a sort of standard increase that you can say, well, it's 10% across the board, because obviously the authority have got other costs to take into account, such as training and so on. But I think that's quite reasonable if we can give some sort of approximation. And I think we obviously note that for the fees and charges for next year. I think that's a reasonable request. Anything else? Is there anything that people want to comment on? Are people happy that this report goes through with obviously the increases as set out in the documents presented here this morning?
Yep.
Yes. Okay. We'll accept that.
You have a seconder, Chair? I moved it. Can we have a seconder?
Yes.
I moved it. Can we have a
Yes.
seconder?
Okay. Thanks, Councillor Reason. Have you got a seconder? Councillor
Second, Chair.
Riley. Okay. Everybody happy?
Yeah.
Yes. Nods of heads. And if you're unhappy, obviously, please indicate now. No, everybody's happy with that. Okay. Thanks very much. Diolch yn fawr. We now go to item 5 on the agenda, which is the exclusion of the press and public. So the live stream goes off at this stage.